look, Craig's one of the best in the business, so I'm looking forward to it. I'm a little bit nervous. I'll probably get even more nervous when it gets closer to it, but I'm looking forward to it. It'll be great. I think I'll be pretty scared, but I'm really looking forward to it, actually. That was absolutely sensational. Oh, that was unreal. That's one of the best things I've ever done, that was unreal. Loved it.
He was full of bravado at the end of that, I can tell you, Shane Warne. But at the start of that hot lap with Craig Lowndes, he was a totally different guy because he was petrified about it.
I wonder how keen Warnie would have been had he known that Craig bowled a wide up at turn 5 in the earlier practice session and knocked the back of the car in.
Well, going on that theme, I can tell you he was stumped at the end of it. And it was great to see Shane Warne here, just part of the glitz and the glamour of the Clipsal 500. It was a one-lap dash for Lowndes and Warne on that one. But, of course, the qualifying format that we spoke about is a whole different kettle of fish. We didn't really know what we were going to get until it started to unfold on the track. And I guess that's the question, Neil, because at a track like this, a street circuit, there's disadvantages and there's advantages to not having a shootout.
Indeed. The shootout, which we'll see again at Bathurst later in the year, is really knife edge, but this process means you can rehearse. And in this particular track, as you pointed out, this 3.2 kilometre street circuit, Matty, when you have a practice effect and you effectively get through to that third period of qualifying, you get to rehearse. You get another set of tyres, you might find a metre or two under brakes. But here it is. What a great street circuit it is. Concrete lined, it's slippery, it's easy to make a mistake around here. Mark Scaife was the fastest man last year in qualifying, 21.6. The hotter temperatures this year have knocked some of those numbers around. And when we refer to timing sectors, this is what we refer to from the start line up between turns 6 and 7. The yellow indication there is sector 1. The red down to the braking area of the hairpin at turn 9 is 2. And obviously the last sector there all the way to the checkered flag for the final sector.
Very important to acknowledge too that Ford has not had pole here since back in the very first round of the Clipsal 500 in 1999, and Jason Bright did that. So it certainly favoured the Holden Commodores. This time around, it's all new, isn't it? Because the VE Commodore is on. But this was Stephen Johnson, who wasn't just there or thereabouts throughout practice. He was there the whole way.
These guys had a great test at Queensland Raceway. They're running 888 Race Engineering gear. They bought a kit from Roland Dane at 888. They're still doing all their own adjustments on the run at the race meeting. They've got a new deal, of course, with Jim Beam. There's a great vibe in this team now. Stephen's peeled a bit of weight off. He's training. He's really keen. And he was quick, as you said. He was second fastest in the first 2 practice sessions. And he was very, very strong all day yesterday. I fully expect that he's going to be a guy we need to pay careful attention to.
There's a good feeling at the Jim Beam Racing team. And there's also a pretty good feeling from Russell Ingall. He is one man who is glad in particular that the shootout's gone. He wasn't a fan of it.
But it wasn't a smooth start for them in the first 2 practice sessions. At one point they tore one of the little ears off the diff housing at the back of the car underneath the rear of the car, and that delayed them. They also had an oil leak at one point, and believe it or not, they had a slowly deflating tyre, so we didn't see a representative time from Russell in earlier practice, but it all came together and he was very strong in qualifying. New engineer in there this year, Dave Stewart, who was formerly with the Dick Johnson Racing team, and Stone Brothers got it right when it mattered most in qualifying yesterday.
The other half of the Stone Brothers Racing query that came out of this qualifying session was answered at the very end. We'll get to that shortly, but Russell Ingall would finish in position number 8, which is where he will start race 1 of the Clipsal 500. Of course, the 2005 series champion dipped down to 8th in 2006. He's got a very big point to prove. Craig Lowndes, as you mentioned, bowled a wide, as you said, in practice and put the rear of the Team Vodafone Falcon into the wall during practice, but he bounced back in this one in position 6.
It wasn't a super quick start to the weekend for these guys. Both the drivers I went and spoke to after the early practice sessions, and they reported their cars were nervous. Right here, where we're on board with Craig at the moment, these 90-degree second gear corners where you're trying to transmit over 600 horsepower to the road all the time. The front of the car was very pinned on the road. The rear of the car was very loose and sliding. Matty, you know, you can't do that for a couple of hours around here on that racetrack in race conditions, so they had to clean that up. Craig was 5th fastest in the first practice session. 9th quickest in the next one. He was only 18th in qualifying 1, but remember, they're playing their tyres carefully through these qualifying stages. He got himself into the top 10. Hasn't quite got the speed that he's looking for. You know what? Every time I see those cars go through turn 8, I start to sweat. It is fantastic.
Imagine what Shane Warne was doing. 41 degrees, in fact, it was throughout this qualifying session. I think the track temperature was well and truly above that, and some 60 degrees further up in the cabin. This man was the story, I guess, of the qualifying session, Jason Richards. The story because he posted a good time, but then ended the session without fuel.
That's right. I spoke to Wally's story, talking about stories earlier today about this car. You know, it had not run until they went out in the first practice session yesterday, and they finished up in 6th. Jamie Whincup, last year's champion here at the Clipsal 500. Like his teammate Craig Lowndes, made a small mistake up here on the East Terrace area at the end of Wakefield Street. Pretty bumpy under brakes up there at the end of Wakefield Street, turn 4, and he just whacked the wall there, knocked the rear quarter panel in on the car. You know, repairing the cars is no big deal. The guys are well capable of doing it, but it puts a delay in their program. They don't like that. Mark Winterbottom for Ford Performance Racing, a very, very strong test at Winton last week on day 2. He recorded a 1 minute 22.5 there. I can tell you in summer, Matty, that is a very quick time. And he jumped out the box here pretty well. Not so good in the first practice session, 14th, but fastest in the second practice session, and played himself beautifully through the qualifying period.
Mark Winterbottom, of course, has a new teammate this year in Stephen Richards, so you can imagine the team games going on within the FPR garage. But Mark Winterbottom would post the 4th fastest time. There's no question he will be a danger man here at the Clipsal 500. What about Garth Tander? Quickest, the new VEs.
And really consistent. His engineer, Matt Nilsson, and Garth have been consistently working on trying to make this car a nice car to drive over the distance. 4th in practice 1, 3rd in practice 2, 2nd in qualifying 1, 4th in qualifying 2, ultimately 3rd when it counted at the end of the session. The car also tested extremely well at Winton last week. The Toll HSV dealer team were the first people to put an E-Series car on the track this year.
A brilliant 2006 season for Garth Tander, derailed, of course, at the endurance races, his championship hopes. So he comes back into 2007 with a very, very big point to prove. Well, no longer the rookie. That's the headline for James Courtney for 2007. He was the Rookie of the Year last year, but he showed the pace and he collected his first ever Armour All Pole Award in the V8 Supercar Championship. They always say, Neil, that your 3rd year probably in this category is the one, but over the course of his young but stellar career, James Courtney has proved that the 2nd year has been the one.
He's done great things in every category. He's been a world karting champion, a Formula 4 champion. We know what he's done in Formula 1, and look at him there at the top of the Armour All points table, or should I say our grid. The results after qualifying, and a margin of 0.11 over Jamie Whincup, so an all-blue Ford front row. Garth Tander, the first of the Holdens, in position 3.
A fantastic performance as you go down to position 10 there from the Gary Rogers Motorsport. Car number 33 of Lee Holdsworth. His counterpart Dean Canto had a few troubles early on in practice session and copped a rap over the knuckles from Gary. Look at some of the names here in the guys that didn't make it to the last 10 green bottles, as you said. Mark Scaife and Rick Kelly.
Yeah, notably 15th, 16th and 17th. And those guys have got a little bit of work to do today. They're right in that mid-pack. John Bow tops the next group, 21st, Paul Morris, Max Wilson. Cam McConville, you talked about 1999 before, and every time you say that number, it reminds me that that's when his car was originally debuted. It is an old V8 supercar. He'll be looking forward to getting a new E-Series car.
And Macro will be driving the Team Kiwi racing car in place of Paul Richards. And look at that, James Courtney pockets $5,000. The Armour All Pole Award, the first one, is on the board for 2007. He's got a good smile, he's got a happy smile, and I think he's going to have a lot to smile about this year.
Yeah, he was really, really happy and relieved. He knows the tracks more now. He's certainly got a better relationship with his team. Remember this time last year, the poor kid was bounced from pillar to post. All the big boys in town said, OK, James, you're a hero, are you? Cop this. And he certainly learnt the hard way in the early races. He's now much more comfortable and relaxed.
Did split his season in two, didn't he? His first half of the season was poor, like you said, and the qualifying was poor along the way, but gee, it came together towards the end of 06. And as I mentioned, he was the Rookie of the Year for 2006. I reckon it's time for us to get set and go racing, because the Yokohama V8 Utes are about to be on track. The Bustle and the Barge, race 2 of their first round, is coming up.